In 1944, Allied bomber crews began reporting something impossible. A small, swept-wing fighter would shoot straight up through their formations, vanish, then glide back down without a trace of engine noise. It wasn't a jet. It was a rocket-powered interceptor, the only one ever built to fight a war. The Messerschmitt May 163 Comet could outclimb and outrun anything in the sky, reaching almost 600 miles per hour when most propeller planes struggled past 400. But it could stay powered for only about 7 minutes. Once the fuel ran dry, the pilot had to glide home, unarmed and unprotected. This wasn't Germany's secret wonder weapon that might win the war. It was an act of desperation, an aircraft designed to meet Allied bombers head-on when the Reich had almost no fuel, no time, and no options left. Its story begins not in a factory, but on a hillside full of gliders. The Comet's designer, Alexander Lippisch, was one of Germany's most original aerodynamic minds. Long before the war, he wasn't building fighters. He was flying sailplanes. At the DFS, the German Research Institute for Sailplane Flight, Lippisch spent the 1930s testing tailless, delta-shaped gliders, searching for the most efficient way to move through air. His aircraft looked nothing like the biplanes of the day. They were short, triangular, and fast. By 1937, the Luftwaffe was paying attention. Glider work had given Germany an edge in aerodynamics, despite Versailles-era restrictions on powered flight. The idea emerged: if a tailless glider could handle well at high speeds, perhaps it could become a high-speed interceptor. Lippisch's team began experimenting with rocket propulsion in a test craft called the DFS-194. Early rocket engines came from engineer Helmuth Walter, whose peroxide-fueled motors promised immense thrust for a few terrifying minutes. The glider proved stable enough to handle the new power, and in 1939, Lippisch and his entire group were transferred to Messerschmitt AG at Augsburg to turn the concept into a real aircraft. Work moved quickly. By September 1941, the prototype May 163A flew under rocket power, reaching speeds near 1,000 kilometers per hour, far faster than any propeller-driven aircraft then flying. Observers realized the project had crossed into unknown territory. Human reflexes, instruments, and even the materials of the day were at their limits. Within 2 years, the concept would evolve into the May 163B Comet, armed with twin 30mm cannons and readied for combat. What began as a glider designer's experiment was about to become Germany's most dangerous and self-destructive fighter. At Messerschmitt, Lippisch's glider concept was transformed into something closer to a weapon than an airplane. The first true prototype, the May 163A, kept the delta wing layout, but added a compact pressurized cockpit, a Walter rocket motor, and a jettisonable takeoff dolly in place of landing gear. It lifted off fast, dropped the dolly, fought its brief flight, then landed on a retractable skid beneath the fuselage. In tests at Peenemünde and Augsburg, pilots discovered that once the rocket ignited, the May 163A accelerated so violently that airspeed needles bent against their stops. Test pilot Heini Dittmar reached 1,004 kilometers per hour. That's about 623 miles per hour, on the 2nd of October, 1941. He became the first man to break 1,000 kilometers per hour in level flight. The shock waves buffeted the control surfaces, causing tail vibration that nearly destroyed the prototype. Aerodynamicists learned about compressibility effects, early hints of what we now call the transonic barrier, years before supersonic flight was possible. These data shaped the refined May 163B, shortened and simplified for mass production. It carried twin 30mm Mk-108 cannon in the wing roots and used the improved HWK 509 motor with variable thrust, giving a climb rate of 16,000 feet per minute. But every improvement added new hazards. The engine burned a mix of T-Stoff, a concentrated hydrogen peroxide oxidizer, and C-Stoff, a blend of hydrazine and methanol. Contact between the two could turn a drip into an explosion. Ground crews wore rubber suits and flushed the aircraft with water after each fueling. Yet accidents were constant. Training units at Lechfeld and Brandis lost aircraft before they ever faced an enemy. Still, the Luftwaffe pushed the project forward. Any weapon that could climb to Allied bombers faster than escort fighters was worth the risk. The May 163B could reach takeoff speed in under 20 seconds and rocket from ground level to 30,000 feet in less than 3 minutes. That made it the fastest climbing aircraft of the Second World War, faster than anything with propellers and faster even than the early jets that would follow. But its power came at a cost. The rocket motor drank fuel so quickly that a full tank, about 2,000 liters of propellant, was gone in roughly 7.5 minutes. After that, the aircraft became a glider. Pilots had to glide back to base, land on an unpowered skid, and hope their landing strip hadn't been bombed in the meantime. Its theoretical range was barely 25 miles from base to interception point. To compensate, operational comets were stationed close to industrial regions under constant attack, places like Leipzig and Brandis. Every mission was a mathematical race against time: 1 minute to climb, 3 minutes to reach the bombers, 2 to attack, and 1 to turn for home. No other aircraft in history gave its pilots such extreme performance for such a short lifespan in the air. The Comet had proven that rocket power could work. The question now was whether it could work long enough to matter. By 1944, the Luftwaffe's bomber defense crisis was critical. Allied raids on industrial cities came daily. Conventional interceptors couldn't climb fast enough to reach the bomber streams before they were gone. To field the Comet quickly, the Luftwaffe created a special unit, Fighter Wing 400, formed in early 1944 under Major Wolfgang Späth, a veteran fighter pilot who had already tested rocket-assisted takeoff systems. JG-400 trained at Brandis Airfield near Leipzig, one of the few bases with a long enough runway and open area for the Comet's gliding landings. Wolfgang Späth himself flew the first powered May 163B mission on 13th May 1944, reaching 30,000 feet in minutes. He reported the acceleration as like being kicked by a giant. But most early flights were training only. Fuel accidents destroyed several aircraft before they ever saw combat. When the unit finally went operational in July 1944, the Comets launched against formations of B-17 flying fortresses. Pilots were to climb through the bomber stream, make one firing pass, and dive away. The plan sounded elegant. In practice, the speed differential made accurate shooting nearly impossible. In its first 6 months of combat, JG-400 claimed around 9 confirmed kills for the loss of over 20 aircraft, many in non-combat explosions or crash landings. Still, the appearance of rocket fighters terrified bomber crews. Intelligence briefings simply called it the Flaming Arrow. Every launch consumed precious rocket fuel and risked the pilot's life, yet results remained marginal. By late 1944, even the Luftwaffe's high command saw that the Comet was too fast for its own purpose. The May 163's combat experience revealed how thin the line was between innovation and suicide. Ground crews had to wear rubberized suits and goggles during fueling. If even a drop of T-Stoff met C-Stoff, the reaction could melt metal and flesh alike. Several Comets exploded before takeoff, sometimes vaporizing aircraft and crew together. Once airborne, pilots had about 5 minutes of attack time. The Comet's cannon carried only 60 rounds per gun, and the Mk-108's slow muzzle velocity meant that at 500 miles per hour closure speed, shells often missed or passed through bombers without detonating. Landing was another gamble. Returning unpowered, the aircraft had to glide toward the field at the exact angle. If it undershot, it crashed short. If it overshot, there was no second try. Even successful landings were violent. The skids slammed down, fuel sloshed, and any residue could ignite. By the end of 1944, more May 163s were destroyed in training and takeoffs than shot down by the enemy. The Luftwaffe experimented with upward-firing mortars called Jagdfaust, automatic tubes that fired when a bomber passed overhead, but few were fitted before the war ended. The comet's speed made interception look like science fiction, but it also showed the limits of what a pilot and machine could do under wartime stress. Germany had built the fastest plane in the world, and one of the most impractical. When the comet finally appeared in Allied gun sights, it caused more confusion than fear. B-17 crews over Germany reported a red comet streaking through formation at speeds their gunners couldn't track. Many thought it was a new kind of jet or even a guided missile. The first Allied pilot to see one up close was Captain Chuck Yeager, then flying P-51s. He later recalled, "The comet looked like it was tied to a rocket, but no one could stay with it long enough to fight." After the war, the British obtained several captured examples and handed one to Captain Eric Brown, the Royal Navy's chief test pilot. Brown became the only Allied pilot to fly the May 163 under power. His verdict was blunt. You couldn't just step into the aircraft and say, "I'm going to fly it to the limit." The acceleration crushed the pilot into the seat, control inputs lagged, and any mistake could rupture a fuel line. Allied analysts concluded that the comet's sheer speed was useless without endurance or stability. Their own jet projects, like the Gloucester Meteor and P-80 Shooting Star, offered slightly less speed but could stay airborne for half an hour. The rocket fighter had proved a record breaker, not a war winner. As Allied bombing intensified, Germany's aircraft industry scattered underground. Comet assembly moved to Kuno Works near Kassel and to smaller subassembly plants run with forced labor from concentration camp prisoners and foreign workers. By late 1944, skilled technicians were gone. Production relied on underfed, untrained captives working under guard. Quality control collapsed, engines leaked, tanks cracked, and the already dangerous fuel system became lethal. In one documented case, a captured 163B, examined by Allied engineers, contained stones and bits of wire deliberately hidden in its fuel lines, clear evidence of sabotage. Workers had risked execution to cripple the machines they were forced to build. By then, the numbers told the story. About 370 comets produced, fewer than 80 ever reaching combat units. With jet aircraft like the May 262 taking priority and fuel stocks nearly gone, the rocket fighter's production simply stopped. The Luftwaffe had tried to replace experience and time with velocity, and ended up with neither. When Germany surrendered in May 1945, dozens of comets remained scattered across northern airfields. The Allies seized them immediately. The British took several to their test and research center. One went to Captain Eric Brown, who confirmed that even under careful conditions, fueling it was more dangerous than flying it. The United States shipped captured airframes to Wright Field in Ohio for evaluation under Operation Lusty, the same intelligence sweep that brought home jet aircraft like the May 262. American engineers studied the Walter HWK-509 rocket motor to understand its propellants and pumps. The data fed into later research aircraft such as the Bell X-1, though the actual systems were deemed too unstable for regular use. The Soviets recovered others, flying a near copy designated BI-1 for short-range tests, but their program ended after a fatal explosion. By the late 1940s, the rocket interceptor concept was finished. Jets like Britain's Meteor and America's F-80 could reach similar altitudes with endurance measured in half hours, not minutes. Roughly 370 May 163s were built. Fewer than 100 ever flew in combat. Confirmed victories numbered under a dozen. Pilot fatalities exceeded 60, most in takeoff or landing accidents. For Germany, the Comet drained fuel, manpower, and research capacity in the final year of the war without changing its outcome. For aviation, it marked both a milestone and a dead end, the first aircraft to exceed 1,000 kilometers per hour in level flight, yet impossible to sustain as a weapon.